Yes, hello, it's me again, Madam Gracious Kanzieni from Educare Tanzania. Welcome for our session today. We are going to learn chemistry subject and our class level today is Form 1. Today we are going to look on our topic known as scientific procedures. In this topic, we are going to cover the different subtopics which are the concept and the significance of the scientific procedures. Hapa tunaenda kuangalia concept za scientific procedure na umuhimu wake. And another is the main steps of scientific procedure. Here we are going to see the guidelines or the steps which we can use so as we can conduct this scientific procedure. And last subtopic is all about how this scientific procedure can be applicable in our daily life, or how can we apply it. Okay, let's start with the concept of this scientific procedure. The scientific procedure is also known as scientific investigation, or sometimes it's also known as scientific methods. By definition, scientific methods is a set of technique used by scientists to investigate a problem or answer the questions. Kwamba huu ni uchunguzi wa kisayansi. So ni technique or set of procedures ambazo zinafuatwa na wanasayansi ili kufanya uchunguzi wa matatizo mbalimbali au ili kuweza kupata suluhisho la tatizo fulani. This is what we call the scientific method. Okay, now let us see the steps of scientific methods. The following are the steps which are taken when carrying out scientific investigation. Kwamba wakati tunafanya sasa ule uchunguzi wa kisayansi, step hizi za kisayansi ndizo zinazofuatwa. The first step is identify the problem. Hapa tunachunguza tatizo, kutambua tatizo. The second is formulation of a hypothesis. Tunafanya makisio, tunatengeneza makisio ya kile kitu ambacho tumekigundua. Another step, which is the third one, is experiment and observation or observe. Here we are going to conduct the experiment na kuona kutoka kwenye hili tatizo tunapata nini, au kulingana na makisio yetu tuliyoyafanya, je, tunaweza tukapata majibu au hapana. Hii ni experiment step. Another step is all about data collection and analysis. And another step is data interpretation, and final is draw a conclusion from a data. Now we are going to see the one after another. Let us start by the identify problem. Here it means direct we are going to make the problem identification. How? In this step, the scientific makes a puzzling observation. For example, does temperature affect the solubility of common salt in water? Yani hapa ni kwamba mwanasayansi anaenda kufanya puzzling observation, anaenda kufanya observation ya jambo fulani au ya kitu fulani, ili kuweza kugundua sasa kwamba hili ndilo tatizo au kitu hiki kinatokea kwa sababu ya hiki. Kwa hiyo hapa mwanasayansi au yule ambaye anafanya uchunguzi anaenda ku-identify tatizo. Kwa mfano, here we will deal with this example. Tutaenda na huu mfano kuanzia step ya kwanza mpaka step ya mwisho, which is does temperature affect the solubility of common salt in water? Kwamba temperature inaathiri solubility, kile kiwango cha salt, normal salt, chumvi dissolve kwenye maji. So this will be our example from first step to the final step. Now, so after scientists identify the problem, now we came in the second step, which is formulation of a hypothesis. Here in formulation of a hypothesis, actually let us see about the hypothesis. What is hypothesis? A hypothesis is an intelligent guess that tries to explain an observation. So this is a guessing, yani ni makisio. So baada ya yule anayefanya uchunguzi ambaye tunaweza tukamuita scientist, mwana science, akishagundua tatizo kwenye step ya kwanza, akajua hili ndilo tatizo langu, anakuja sasa kufanya guessing au anakuja kufanya makisio. For example, you can see does not temperature affect the solubility of common salt in water. Kwamba tatizo letu tuliona kwamba temperature ina affect solubility of normal salt, chumvi tu ya kawaida maji. Kwa hiyo this scientist now came up with the guessing kwamba temperature haina effect yoyote kwenye solubility of normal salt in water. Now let us see another step, which is the third step of experimentation. This is known as experiment and observe. Here we are going to conduct experiment direct. So by definition, an experiment is a test under controlled condition. Kwamba una conduct experiment under controlled condition. The aim of experiment is to test whether the hypothesis is true or false. Kwamba lengo la kufanya experiment, kufanya uchunguzi sasa ni kujua sasa kwamba hypothesis yako ambayo umetoka kuifanya kwenye third step, kwenye second step ni kweli au sio kweli. Hapa ndio utakuja kupata majibu baada ya kufanya experimentation. And this hypothesis it based on variables, kwamba the hypothesis it based on variables. Test of hypothesis based on variables. Now, what is variable? Okay. Variable is the condition in which changes to obtain set of values. Or sometimes you can see variable is a value that can change depending on condition. Kwamba tuna consider ile value ya kitu ambayo inaweza kubadilika kulingana na vigezo au condition mbalimbali. That is all about variable. Now, let us see the types of variables. Variables are divided or categorized into 3 types. The first one is dependent variable and the second is independent variable. The third one is controlled variable. So, let us see one after another. When we talk about dependent variable, tunamaanisha nini? When we talk about independent and controlled variable, tunamaanisha nini? Now, let us start with the dependent variable. When we talk about dependent variable, it means that the condition to measure or observe to obtain the result means that this depends other factor. Kwamba yenyewe ni dependent, inategemea. That's why it's called dependent variable. Kwamba it depend on other factor. So it is just a condition to measure or observe to obtain the certain result. For example, kutoka kwenye mfano wetu tulioanza nao kuanzia kwenye step ya kwanza ambao ni does temperature affect the solubility of salt of normal salt in water. Hapa dependent variable ni solubility. Here is our dependent variable kwa sababu solubility ndio kigezo ambacho kinategemea other factors. Kwamba solubility inaweza ikatokea au isitokee kwa sababu ya factor nyingine. Another variable is independent variable. When we talk about independent variable, hapa tunaongelea those variable which do not depend on others. Independent. Does not depend on others. Now, this is a condition manipulate to obtain the result. This it tend to manipulate. Yenyewe inaelekea sasa ili tuweze kuobserve a certain changes or a certain result. And from our sample of our example here, the independent variable will be temperature. It means temperature does not depend on other factor, but it will be there. It manipulates to obtain the results. Another types of variable is controlled variable. Here, when we talk about controlled variable, means that no any changes. It's kept constant. And By definition, controlled variable, you can say that is a condition may unchange to obtain the result. May unchange means it is constant. Are all conditions or variable which are kept constant. For example, from our example, the controlled variable, it will be water. From our example, it will be water. Note that controlled variable always ensure that the effect of the independent variable on the dependent variable are isolated. Kwamba lengo la controlled variable always it tend to ensure that independent variable and dependent variable are isolated. That is the main purpose of controlled variable. Ndio maana yenyewe inakuwa ni constant, haibadiliki, ni unchange condition. Now, another step is data collection and analysis. Okay, we have seen the third step, which is experiment. Baada ya experiment, now tunaenda kwenye stage nyingine ambayo ni data collection and analysis. It concerns recording what you have observed during experiment. Hapa tunaangalia yenyewe hii inahusika na data zile ambazo umezipata baada ya kufanya uchunguzi wako. Umefanya experiment, umepata majibu, umepata baadhi ya data. So those data you collect and analyze here in this step. And most are kept in summary of table. For instance, you can see here. Ule mfano wetu ambao tulitoka nayo kuanzia mwanzo, step ya kwanza, tunadili na temperature na solubility. So you can see here the temperature was recorded as follows. After doing the experiment, the temperature recorded as follows. There is 10 Celsius, 10, 30 and 40. But you can see the solubility, there is 200, 400, 600 and 800. These are data collected after doing the experiment. Okay, another step is data interpretation. Hapa tunaenda sasa kutafsiri data zetu. Baada ya kufanya collection, we are going to interpret our data. In this step, we look trends or patterns and explain why they occur that way. Kwamba hapa tunaenda kuangalia sasa ile trends, ile collection or analysis ya data yetu na kwa nini imekuwa hivyo. For example, from the table above ambayo tumeiona, when temperature increase, also solubility increase. Ngoja nikurudishe nyuma. Umeona hapa, temperature ni 10 wakati solubility ni 200. Na temperature ilivyo increase kutoka kwenye 10 kwenda kwenye 20, solubility imekuja kuwa ni 400. So, you see that there is a direct proportional. There is a direct proportional. When this increase, also the solubility increase. Temperature increase with the increase in solubility. Hapa ndo tunakuja kufanya interpretation sasa ya data kwamba okay, tumefanya experiment, tumecollect data. Now, tunatafsiri matokeo tuliyopata. It means that tumegundua kwamba as the temperature increase, also the solubility of water in the of the salt in normal salt in water, it tended to increase also. Is where we can, hapa ndivyo tunaweza tukatafsiri data zetu kwa namna hiyo. And the final step is all about data draw a conclusion. Hapa tunafanya hitimisho. In this step, it concerns about summary of the experiment. Hapa tunafanya hitimisho la experiment. It includes a statement that either proves or disproves the hypothesis. Kwamba yenyewe inatoa sasa ile statement ambayo kwamba the hypothesis was true or not. It tends to prove or disprove the statement of the hypothesis. Maana hii itakuwa ishatokea baada ya wewe kufanya uchunguzi, umepata majibu, umefanya analysis, umefanya interpretation of your data. Now utakuja draw up a conclusion. Unakuja kutoa hitimisho. For example, in our experiment, change in temperature affects solubility of common salt. Kwamba kumbe change in temperature ina affect solubility ya common salt in water. kwa sababu tuliona tatizo lilikuwa ni je, temperature ina affect solubility of water? I mean solubility of normal salt in water. Baada ya kufanya uchunguzi na kufanya interpretation na analysis kila kitu, finally tumekuja kugundua kwamba yes, it is true kwamba temperature ina affect solubility ya chumvi kwenye maji, kwa sababu as the temperature increase also the solubility tend to increase. Now let us see the application of scientific methods or scientific investigation, whatever the way you can call it on yourself. Okay. First application is carrying out experiments. Kwamba these scientific procedures are applicable in carrying out experiments. An experiment is a scientific test that is done in order to study what happened and to gain new knowledge. Kwa hiyo carrying out experiment, hatuwezi kufanya experiment kama yenyewe ina involve tuna conducting kitu gani kimetokea. Kwa hiyo kama tunafanya hivyo vitu means that tuta involve using of scientific methods ili kuweza kugundua kitu gani kimetokea, au sometime wakati tunafanya experiment tunataka kupata some of knowledge like that. Another is project work, kwamba this scientific methods or scientific investigation tend to be used during the project work. When we talk about a project work is a planned piece of work that involved careful study of a subject matter or a problem over a period of time, so as to find information on the subject matter. Kwamba project ni ile kazi ambayo unaifanya kwa muda fulani. Maybe it is toward the certain subject, or ni kazi ambayo unataka ufanye uchunguzi wa jambo fulani. So kama ni kazi ambayo unataka ufanye uchunguzi wa kitu fulani au jambo fulani, is where you can apply this scientific method or these steps ili uweze kupata majibu ya unachokifanya. Another application is field study or field work, kwamba scientific procedure is applicable in field work. Field work or field study no different with the project, but when we talk about field work here, this involves doing practical work in real environment. Tunaenda kwenye mazingira fulani direct. Utofauti wake ni kwamba tu katika project you can investigate toward a specific subject, but in a field work here we are going to make it in a practical. Tunaenda kufanya kwa vitendo. Kwa hiyo kama tunaenda kufanya kwa vitendo means that we are going to apply the scientific method. Note that a field study also called a field work. Okay. Let us see the significance of scientific methods. Here we are going to see the importance of this scientific methods. Umuhimu wake sasa. First, it help us to solve scientific problem. Inatusaidia kusolve scientific problem, matatizo ya kisayansi. Another, it help us to gain new knowledge, because during using this scientific procedure tunakuwa lazima lazima ugain new knowledge, kwa sababu utataka kujifunza zaidi, utataka kufanya uchunguzi, utataka kufanya analysis ya ulichokichunguza, utataka kufanya interpretation. So actually you are going to gain a lot of knowledge. It helps us to conduct project work, kama tulivyoona kwenye application kwamba scientific methods are applicable in project works. So it helps to conduct project work. Inatusaidia conduct hizi project work. It helps us to carry out field study. As I said about field work, kwamba the scientific procedures are mostly used in field work, ambapo field work we are going to do in a practical way. So kama tunaenda kufanya katika vitendo, ina maana hii hapa scientific procedure au scientific method itaenda kutusaidia, itakuwa ni ya muhimu sana sana, kwa sababu tutaenda kuiapply katika this work. Another, it help us to solve problem or answer scientific question, kwamba tusaidia sasa kupata majibu ya matatizo mbalimbali au kujibu maswali ambayo ni ya kisayansi baada ya kufanywa uchunguzi. The scientists tend to come up with the answers or solution toward that circumstances. Now, after covering all the concepts and significance of scientific procedures, after observing the procedures and application, how it's applicable, now here is the simple task for you. Go and try on your own so as you can improve your own understanding in this concept. The first question is, what do you understand by the following terms? The first is scientific method, another is hypothesis, another is experiment, another is controlled variable. This is the first question. Second question is, describe the main steps of scientific method. So, on your time, go and try. Thank you for watching, and this marks the end of our session today. Stay tuned, Educare TZ, for more learning content.